Okay, here we go. The Sega Genesis Sonic games probably rate among some of the most ported games of all time. Starting with Sonic Jam on the Sega Saturn in 1997, Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic 2, Sonic 3, and Sonic & Knuckles have appeared in some form on nearly every major gaming platform to follow. But for almost 8 years, something strange has been happening. One of the most important games in Sonic's legacy has quietly gone missing, disappearing almost as if it never existed at all.
Erased from existence.
Where did it go? Why did it leave us? And how do we get it back? It's hard to understand Sega sometimes. Back in 2013, Sega paid Christian Whitehead and Simon Tomley, perhaps better known under their internet handles Taxman and Stealth, to co-develop updated versions of the original Sonic the Hedgehog and Sonic 2 for Android and iOS. They did this through Taxman's Retro Engine, a modern creation tool and scripting language made especially for developing modern sprite-based games. Most famously, Retro Engine was the underlying technology that powered Sonic Mania. The first major application for this Retro Engine was their version of Sonic CD, released 2 years earlier in 2011. This Retro Engine version of Sonic CD immediately became the definitive version of the game thanks to widescreen visuals, improved controls, and a handful of bonus features not present in the original Sega CD release. That same attention to detail translated over to the Retro Engine versions of Sonic 1 and 2, once again with widescreen graphics, extra playable characters, extended abilities, and even restored lost levels, like the infamous Sonic 2 version of Hidden Palace Zone. They even went so far as to source the original studio synthesizer that the Sega Genesis sound chip was based on, remastering the music for both games to sound crisp and clean in a way that a home console in the 90s never could. Take a listen. The end result was, again, the definitive versions of these games. But with a catch. Unlike Sonic CD, which released on nearly everything back then, the Retro Engine versions of Sonic 1 and 2 were trapped on mobile platforms. At the time, Sega had just made a deal with Nintendo to release the next 3 Sonic games exclusively for the 3DS and Wii U, limiting what they could do with Sonic 1 or 2. That meant no console or PC ports. Where things get tangled up is what Sega did after that exclusivity deal ended. Instead of having Taxman and Stealth port their existing Retro Engine versions of Sonic 1 and 2 to other platforms, they hired a separate company to develop completely different, brand new ports of Sonic 1 and 2 for the 3DS, under the Sega Ages label, ignoring the fantastic work that was collecting dust right under their noses. The Sega Ages ports were done by a company called M2, a work-for-hire team that specializes in assisting developers with ports and other tasks. This means they don't usually produce original games, they just help out when other developers need their games ported to one platform or the other, and it's a legacy that traces all the way back to the 1990s. M2 has become known for their excellent work with emulation. Sega hired M2 to handle all of the Sega Genesis games on the Wii Virtual Console, as well as the Sega Vintage Collection games on the Xbox 360. M2 has also collaborated with Namco and Konami when it comes to emulating their back catalog of older games on the Nintendo DS, and even Nintendo hired them to handle the Game Boy Advance emulation for the Wii U Virtual Console. Typically, M2 has become known for going above and beyond with bonus features, and they're one of the few developers to successfully emulate the notoriously complex Sega Genesis sound chip. But even then, M2's Sonic 1 and Sonic 2 pale in comparison to the Retro Engine versions of those same games. M2's versions aren't bad, not by any stretch of the imagination, but in terms of bang for your buck, the Retro Engine versions are still the definitive way to play Sonic 1 and 2. Well, assuming you can put up with touchscreen controls or want to spend $7 on an adapter to plug in a USB controller. And yet, Sega continues to ignore them, preferring instead to let M2 handle everything. Or, worse still, hire a third developer to sell you some basic Genesis ROMs and a lackluster emulator, like Sega's Genesis Classics Collection for the PC, PS4, Xbox One, and now even the Nintendo Switch. This collection is handled by a studio named D3T, and their versions of Sonic's Sega Genesis legacy are on par with most official emulation efforts Sega has gone with in the past. Which is to say, it's passable, but not great. What this ultimately means is that you have the Retro Engine versions of Sonic 1 and 2 on mobile platforms, the Sega Ages 3DS versions of Sonic 1 and 2, D3T's versions of Sonic 1 and 2 in the Genesis Classics Collection, brand new Sega Ages ports of Sonic 1 and 2 for the Nintendo Switch, and while producing this video, brand new versions of Sonic 1 and 2 were released on the Sega Genesis Mini. All of these are on the market at the same time, and all of them have different features. Heck, there are even multiple different versions of Sonic 1 and 2 available on the Switch at the same time. Are you confused yet? And there was one big question. What about Sonic 3? Would Taxman and Stealth give it the Retro Engine treatment? Would M2 make a Sega Ages port of it? Would it show up on the Genesis Mini? The answer to all those questions turned out to be no. Earlier I mentioned that Sega released a Genesis Classics collection on the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch. Unlike the loving, meticulous work done by M2 or Taxman and Stealth, the Sega Genesis Classics collection is just a bunch of ROM files running in an emulator, with all of the positives and negatives that entails. It's fine, certainly playable, with features like rewind, save states, and the lot. But just like most Sega Genesis emulators, it has some nasty sound problems. Give it a listen. It also features extras like a new mirror mode, but those features are tacked on gimmicks at best. It's a functional, but not outstanding collection of Sega's 16-bit history, where quantity of games beats out quality of emulation. But there's something missing from the recent editions of the Genesis Classics collection, and that's the absence of the final chapter of the 16-bit Sonic legacy. You get Sonic 1, Sonic 2, even spin-offs like Sonic Spinball and Sonic 3D Blast. But what you don't get is Sonic 3. It's the biggest, most ambitious Sonic game on the Genesis, so not having it leaves a gigantic hole in that collection. So where is it? In 2014, members of the community website Sonic Retro helped launch a campaign to prove to Sega that having Taxman and Stealth handle a Retro Engine remaster of Sonic 3 would be financially viable. But the answer the community received was a disappointing one. Even if fans put all of their financial support behind it, it simply was not possible at that point in time to do anything with Sonic 3. Obviously, not much later, Taxman and Stealth announced Sonic Mania with Sega, so they became too busy to handle a theoretical Sonic 3 remaster. But that doesn't explain why Sonic 3 never turned up in any of the other ways Sega was re-releasing the classic Sonic legacy. Something is going on and they aren't telling us. To understand the secrecy, we have to dive into the controversy surrounding Sonic 3. Buckle up, because things are about to get really complicated. I think it's a pretty widely accepted fact at this point that Michael Jackson was on board to produce music for Sonic the Hedgehog 3. He had a good relationship with Sega, appearing in no fewer than 3 games under their banner, and numerous people known to work with Jackson are credited for sound production in Sonic 3. The final nail in this coffin is Jackson's 1996 single, Stranger in Moscow, which resembles notation used in Sonic 3's credits theme heard 2 years earlier. conflicting reports on why Michael Jackson departed the project. According to Brad Buxer, Jackson was unhappy with the limitations of the Sega Genesis sound hardware.
At the time, game consoles did not allow an optimal sound reproduction, and Michael found it frustrating. He did not want to be associated with a product that devalued his music.
The Sega Genesis sound hardware was based on the Yamaha YM2612, a powerful FM synthesizer that could produce amazing tones when placed in the right hands. Its biggest weakness was samples, which are pre-recorded audio clips not generated by the synth. Voice samples on the Genesis were often scratchy, jittery, and generally difficult to listen to. It's possible Michael Jackson had hopes of including one or more vocal elements in his music for Sonic 3, which the Genesis was clearly not up to handling. Whatever the case may be, Jackson was reportedly frustrated by the end result, and it may have led him to quit the project. Sega themselves probably wanted to avoid being associated with Michael as well. In August of 1993, roughly 6 months before Sonic the Hedgehog 3 was set to release, Jackson became embroiled in the first of multiple child molestation accusations. It was in Sega's best interest to distance themselves from any kind of collaboration with Michael, as it could damage the sales of Sonic 3 if his involvement became widely known. It gave Sega more than enough justification to kick him off the game. But in all honesty, it's probably a little bit of both. Sega and Michael Jackson both had good reasons to break up, and likely came to a mutual agreement to back out of the collaboration. No harm, no foul. Except that it would appear that Sega made a mistake. It's thought that Michael Jackson and his sound team completed some amount of work on roughly 10 songs for Sonic the Hedgehog 3, or a little under 1/5 of that game's soundtrack. We know this because of the 1997 release of Sonic & Knuckles Collection for the PC. Those 10 songs were all replaced with original compositions exclusive to this PC version of the game. A lot of the songs that were replaced have direct, identifiable connections to Michael Jackson or the people he worked with. Sonic 3's credits theme was replaced because some of its structure got reused for Stranger in Moscow. And songs like Launch Base Zone, Knuckles theme, and the mini-boss theme contain voice samples likely tied to Jackson. Ice Cap Zone's music also had to be replaced, given its bass line and chorus were taken from Brad Buxer's unreleased 1980s pop single, Hard Times. It's not a stretch to assume that the other 3 songs that got replaced also had some relation to the collaboration as well. The question you should be asking yourself now is, why did Sega feel the need to replace these songs for the PC version of Sonic 3? And the simple answer to that is because Sega probably didn't actually have permission to keep using the music after the collaboration with Michael Jackson ended. Sonic & Knuckles Collection also postdates the release of Jackson's Stranger in Moscow single, perhaps offering Sega the first clue that they shouldn't have used the music. And we know this became an issue for them because members of the Sonic Retro community actually tried contacting members of Sonic 3's sound team, including those involved with Michael Jackson. When spoken to, Sirocco Jones and Bobby Brooks made reference to a possible lawsuit impending for money Sega allegedly owes to Michael Jackson's production team, specifically for the Sonic 3 soundtrack. Such a lawsuit would compromise Sega's ability to keep re-releasing new versions of Sonic 3 with the infringing music still present. What this ultimately means is that when it comes to newer collections of their old 16-bit games, Sega has started leaving Sonic 3 out, possibly fearing potential legal complications. But hold on. If you dig deep enough, there's a place Sega is still selling Sonic 3. If you have a Steam account, and really, who doesn't these days, then you can still buy a brand new, official version of Sonic 3 and Knuckles on your PC right now for around $5. Why does that version get to exist, when Sonic 3 gets blocked from being included on any of the more recent classic collections? The answer is simple. Sonic 3 was released on Steam in 2011, and the legal threats involving Sirocco Jones and Bobby Brooks weren't known about until 2012, after the Steam version was already on sale. If such a lawsuit were to ever come to pass, the Steam version of Sonic 3 would likely always be included as evidence of Sega's infringement. As such, there might be less of a reason to remove it from sale, as the damage has kind of already been done. For Sega, this is more likely about preventing future damage. Now, the lawsuit from Bobby Brooks has, as of yet, never come to light. Beyond vague threats of Sega owing him money, nobody actually knows on what specific grounds he planned to sue, or whether or not he even had a solid case against Sega at all. Just the same, Sega obviously has a reason to believe his threats are valid, because it's clearly influencing how they conduct business. If they were to ignore his threats, it could lead to a lawsuit that may result in Sega paying out millions of dollars in owed royalties. A lot of the people working at Sega today didn't sign those contracts in 1993, and undoubtedly want to avoid inheriting a problem that wasn't originally theirs. In the most extreme bad case scenario, losing a legal battle like this could even destroy the company entirely. Unfortunately, this leaves one of Sonic's greatest games caught in the crossfire. Sega is so dedicated to this that when they announced the Sega Genesis Mini, they also announced a shell that attaches to the unit, turning it into the so-called Tower of Power. It's a fake Sega CD attached to the real Genesis Mini console with a fake 32X plugged into the slot. And sitting atop everything is a tiny Sonic & Knuckles cartridge. But instead of being locked onto Sonic 3, it's locked onto the original Sonic the Hedgehog. Sega won't even reference Sonic 3 as a joke. It just doesn't exist anymore. So what are we to do? Well, there's a couple of alternatives to play the definitive version of Sonic 3, but I think one is better than the other. Normally, this is where I'd recommend something called Sonic 3 Complete, which is a modified version of Sonic 3 with a heap of bonus features. It is originally based on a version of Sonic 3 that Sega actually planned to release in 1994. It would have combined Sonic 3 plus Sonic & Knuckles into a single cartridge. It has since grown into a much larger project, full of tons and tons of small quality-of-life improvements to visuals, music, and gameplay. But there's one problem. It primarily exists as a gray market ROM file to be used in an emulator. Now things get really complicated. When I do these videos, I don't like to bring up emulation. If you're new to this term, an emulator is a piece of software most commonly for your PC, and it allows you to run games from other platforms. So, for example, there are emulators that allow you to run PlayStation games on your PC, there are emulators that let you run old DOS games on modern versions of Windows, there are even advanced emulators that let you run recent consoles like the Wii U, Xbox 360, and PlayStation 3, all natively on your computer. I personally use emulators all the time, but they can be difficult to work with and largely target tech-savvy individuals with advanced skill sets. Some emulators require external files to run that are difficult to obtain legally, and I am against promoting piracy on this channel. Plus, emulators often require obscenely powerful PC hardware in order to run smoothly. Depending on how accurate the emulator is, even something like the nearly 30-year-old Super Nintendo requires a somewhat modern multi-core CPU to emulate at full speed. Using less intensive emulators often introduces compatibility issues as well. So it's kind of a mess I'd rather not include in these videos. The point of these videos, at least currently, is to outline the safest, easiest, and most legal way to play these games. The Sonic 3 Complete ROM is fantastic, but it is technically illegal to download and play. I'm not here to pass moral judgments. You do whatever you want. Sonic 3 Complete is pretty easy to find through a Google search. Obviously, if I'm telling you about the game, then I myself have played it. Many times, in fact. This is more about wanting to present the best option for my audience. Now, it would be normally possible for you to legally download Sonic 3 Complete through the Steam version of Sonic 3. Sega enabled what they refer to as mod support for all of their Genesis games exclusively on the PC, which basically means users can upload modified ROM files to the Steam Workshop for you to play in their official console emulator. The problem is, that in itself has turned into kind of a mess. The part where I said Sega lets users share ROM files on the Steam Workshop? Yeah, what that eventually turned into was a place for people to upload pirated games. Sega used to be very proactive in keeping illegally uploaded games off the service, but it's clear they've been asleep at the wheel for a long time because the workshop today is flooded with the stuff. Don't get me wrong, I'm as raw game preservation as the next person, but there's more at stake here than you getting a slap on the wrist for downloading a pirated version of NBA Jam.
Oh, boom shakalaka!
This could be seen as Sega themselves facilitating piracy. What's going to happen when a big scary corporation like Disney sees that Sega is enabling piracy of games like Aladdin? Disney sells the Genesis version of Aladdin bundled with The Lion King on Steam for $30, when instead you could buy a game like Ristar from Sega for 99 cents, and then use Ristar to pirate the same version of Aladdin from the Steam Workshop for free. That is a significantly cheaper option. But it's also piracy, and Disney is a notoriously heavy-handed company when it comes to solving legal matters. Disney could very easily sue Sega for financial damages, and it would essentially be an open and shut case. This makes the Sega Genesis Steam Workshop a massive liability, because there are hundreds of pirated games available. It's safe to say that I don't think it'll be around forever. Sega's already kind of given up on it, so all it's going to take is for a lawyer to breathe in the general direction of that workshop, and the whole thing is going to get deleted. You might be able to play the Sonic 3 complete ROM file through the Sega Genesis Workshop today, but there's no guarantee that it'll still be possible tomorrow, or a week from now, or a year from now. And you wouldn't even want to play it there anyway, given that as of an update last July, the emulator used on the Steam version of the Sega Genesis collection won't even save your progress if you're playing a modded Workshop game. This means that even if you did try to play Sonic 3 complete from the Steam Workshop, none of your progress would be saved. You will start that game over from scratch every single time you load it. It's just all around, this Sega Genesis collection on Steam is a big, messy nightmare, and don't even think about using it for anything right now. However, there is another and considerably more legal way to do all of this, and it's almost as good, if not better in some ways. A new project was completed recently called Angel Island Revisited, or AIR for short. For the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to call it AIR. Essentially, AIR is a piece of software that pulls data out of the official Steam version of Sonic 3 and puts it into a new engine that provides full-on 16:9 widescreen support, enhanced visuals, and enhanced music. Very similar to what Taxman and Stealth did for Sonic 1 and 2 in the Retro engine. Unfortunately, as of yet, AIR does not support all of the features from Sonic 3 Complete, and may never. But it makes up for that discrepancy with exclusive features of its own, including expanded controller button support, a new achievement system, and other fun bonuses, like the ability to play as Knuckles and Tails in a team, or unlocking the drop dash from Sonic Mania. It even has its own real, actual mod support, allowing you to create new levels using the Son Ed 2 level editor, replace the soundtrack, and eventually even more. AIR is still a pretty new project, so hopefully it'll adopt more of the quality of life fixes from Sonic 3 Complete in the future. The developer, Yuka Riot, has been pretty steadily providing work-in-progress development builds on the Sonic Retro forums, so the project has a bright future ahead. Installing Angel Island Revisited is incredibly simple. Just download the game, extract the folder, and run the Sonic 3 AIR executable. If you have the Sega Genesis classics installed on Steam and Sonic & Knuckles in your library, AIR will automatically find all of the required files and boot up without any setup required. It just works. At worst, if it can't find the required file, it will just ask you to manually find it. From there, it's as simple as finding the Sonic_Knuckles_WSonic3.bin file in your Steam folder. Just open Steam, right-click the Sega Genesis Classics, bring up its properties, and click Browse Local Files. You should be brought to wherever your Genesis games are installed, and the required .bin file should be in the uncompressed ROMs folder, assuming you own the game. If you happen to still have an old Sonic & Knuckles collection disc, you can also still technically play that on modern versions of Windows as well. Just like with Sonic R, copy the contents of the disc to a folder on your hard drive, then use something called Sega PC Reloaded to install the game. It'll fix everything up and make it work again, but you won't get any of the bonus features from Sonic 3 AIR or Sonic 3 Complete. It'll just be the regular version of Sonic & Knuckles Collection from 1997. I'll link the full Sega PC Reloaded install tutorial in the video description. And if you want the definitive way to play Sonic 1 and 2, I really cannot stress enough that I think the mobile ports have the best bonus features and extras. The good news is the Retro Engine versions of Sonic 1 and 2 are actually free on mobile platforms right now, as they are part of a service called Sega Forever. Games released on Sega Forever are ad-supported, but the ads can be removed by purchasing said games for a very reasonable price of $2. If you don't want to use touch controls to play Sonic 1 and 2, there's a good chance that your PlayStation, Xbox, or even Nintendo Switch controller can be paired with your phone through Bluetooth. On Android, that can sometimes cause input lag, so what I ended up doing was buying a $7 USB adapter from Amazon. Now I can connect my PlayStation 4 controller to my Android tablet hassle-free. Different phones and tablets will require different kinds of adapters, so it's up to you to figure out which one you'd need to buy. Personally, I say it's worth it. And that's it. That's how you play the definitive version of Sonic 3, and Sonic 2, and Sonic 1. Thanks for watching the video. But before you click off, I just want to take a moment to say something. I know I tend to give the generic Patreon spiel at the end of these videos, and people probably take that as their cue to leave. But I want to take a moment and just emphasize how important your support on Patreon really is, because things on YouTube are getting kind of sketchy these days. If there's ever, like, an emergency in my life, Patreon is my safety net. You may remember that a couple of years ago my computer was damaged while I was moving, and ended up getting fried because of a power surge. The money I'd saved up from Patreon donations helped me buy replacement parts so that I could fix it. Around that same time, I spent almost a week in the hospital with pneumonia. Patreon helped pay for some of my medical expenses. If it wasn't for the support I get on Patreon, this video you're watching right now might not even exist at all. The people that support me on Patreon are heroes, and I wish I had more to give back to them. Special shoutouts to Thomas G, Gabriel M, Dave M, Keith S, Rose S, Juan Pablo, and everyone else on my Patreon. If you'd like to be one of my heroes, just visit patreon.com/blazehedgehog to learn more. If even half the people that subscribe to me on YouTube donated just $1 to my Patreon, I'd never have to worry about anything. And even though it's a Patreon, I have links over there for other ways you can help me out too. Though, look, I get it. If you can't afford to donate, don't stress about it too much. Even if you don't donate, consider subscribing to this channel, liking this video, and sharing it with anyone else that may enjoy it. If nothing else, that'll help YouTube's algorithm find my video, and in turn, it'll help others find the video as well. And that obviously helps me out. Anyway, I'll stop being sappy now. But again, thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you on the next video.